Again, the Mechaber here is talking about the interesting topic regarding achrayus. When a person has, I should say achrayus, that's the wrong word, authority. When a person has a position of authority, the achrayus that brings with it. So paragraph B is, Yeshna achrayus gedolat seitol. When a person has a position of authority, there's an incredible achrayus responsibility that rests upon his shoulders. Kevan, shatzlochas achaim shel bnei adam shetachtov. Because, for example, sometimes when a person has a position of authority, so they have to realize that the success of others rests upon their shoulders. L'mashal, hisnaguso shel mora el ha-talmid, tashpia l'chol orech chayev. This is an incredible use. So a person is a teacher. So a teacher has to understand that the way he or she behaves will have an impact or can have an impact upon the student for the rest of their lives, l'tov or l'ra, either in a beneficial or chas v'shalom in a detrimental way, chas v'shalom. Pakid b'misrad, memshaltina. This is very interesting because he's also broadening the scope of authority. So pakid b'misrad memshalti, someone who works in a government office, right? Someone in an important position in a government office. Yochel b'achlato shel rega lios le'ezer. So that person could choose to help, or that person could choose to be a stumbling block. Psak dino shel shofet. The judge, when he issues his judgments, yochol hashpia l'chaim o l'maves, has the ability to impact another for life or for death. Shoter yochol l'tzaer b'chinam o lahavi lahatzalos chaye adam. An officer could go ahead and cause unnecessary difficulties, or could ultimately, again, somehow engage in life-saving activities. So again, the idea as to why, now we'll see, you're going to see why he's going into this topic. The reason he's going into this topic is because, remember, again, this all flows back. Remember what we're trying to do? We're trying to go ahead and take the 3 pillars of Emunah and to try to figure out the 3 pillars of Emunah, meaning everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ultimately, Akol L'Tova, everything is for good. And there's a tachlis, there's a purpose in everything that happens in my life. So now he's trying to build that in to people who wield influence, to people who have positions of authority. Gimel, L'Bal Tafkid Ish Tzorach Ba'avodas Hamidos, Yoser Me'adam Ragel. This is very profound. The reason why a position of authority sometimes is more difficult, because a person who is in a position of authority has a greater responsibility to be a Baal Midos Tovos, to have good character traits, and his responsibility is greater than what we'll call a regular person. Why? Because any person in a position of authority is going to encounter incredible challenges that he will be unable to properly meet without proper character traits. A person in a position of authority has a choice to make every single moment. Should he do good with others or should he harm them? Should he act in a compassionate way? Should he act in a cruel way? Should he help people? Literally, should he do favors, right, and help people or not? Should he give a serious punishment or lesser punishment? Or should a person be forgiving altogether? Furthermore, a person has a choice. Should he act with derech eretz and with honor to the person who stands opposite him? Or should I go ahead and ignore the individual or mistreat him, degrade him, humiliate him? This is an incredible yisod. So therefore, the person is in a position of authority, recognizing how his decisions impact other individuals, recognizing therefore that there is a greater need for him to act with proper midos tovos, and a person in a position of authority before making a decision has to ask himself, what is the Ratzon Hashem? Now look at the next paragraph. If we bring this all together, he says, because the principle is shekasher yesh la'adam tafkid samchuti hu tzarich liros ezeh kishlichos mishamayim Shurak Tzinor Shel Hashem. When a person has a position of authority, he has to understand that the Ribono Shel Olam placed him in that situation for some intended purpose. So let's remember, we saw this Gemara in Baba Basra, that the Gemara says that every leadership position is choreographed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even what? Remember the Gemara said, even the guy who's in charge of the irrigation of the fields, that he is appointed by the Ribono Shel Olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts people in positions of authority because he feels that they have the ability to make a good impact. Being in a position of authority is a shlichus from the Ribono Shel Olam. Lachein, we'll say, and lachein yetiv im bnei adam shebazeh makayim shlichuso. Therefore, if I'm in a position of authority and I do good for others, I am being makayim my shlichus. Im yiskab betafkido. On the other hand, if a person becomes a bal gaiva, a person becomes arrogant in his position of authority, v'yachshov shu balabayis ala nasurim tachtav, and he thinks that he's in charge of those under him, hu yikasho v'hu yanei shalkach. He will stumble and he will be punished for this. So we'll say it's an incredible yisod, because understand, all of us are in positions of authority. So some of us may be in career positions of authority, but the truth is, if a person has a mishpacha, you're in a position of authority. Right, it may not be the absolute authority, but at the end of the day, all of us have authority in different areas of life. Some of us in career, some of us in the world, some of us in community, some of us in home. Everyone exercises some level of authority. And so what the Mechaber is saying is, understand that a position of authority, wherever it is, the world, community, career, home, is a shlichus from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ribono Shel Olam has put me in that position. Why? For one simple purpose. Because it is through that position that I have the ability to positively benefit others. I have the ability, whoever those others are, my community, my co-workers, my mishpacha, my friends, whoever it may be. And therefore, before I make decisions in that capacity of authority, I have to remind myself, I am here because it is a shlichus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, I ask myself one simple question, which is, what does the Ribono Shel Olam want from me in this circumstance? And if I ask myself that question before exercising my authority, then ultimately, again, I'll use my authority to actualize my shlichus. I'll use my authority ultimately again to benefit others. All right, so we'll stop over here. We'll pick up last paragraph Kuf Lamed Hey on Monday, on Tuesday.
It's not centered.
Amen.
All right, Joe, we'll say good morning. Let's begin. We have a beautiful daf ahead of us today. We are going to pick up with Ibaylahu. It is today's daf is Mem Zayin 47. We're picking up Mem Vav Mem 46b, and we are picking up 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. A lot to do today. Ibaylahu. Hesped yikar dechayehu o yikar deshchivi. We'll say a hesped, a eulogy. Is a eulogy considered to be an act of honor for the living or for the dead? In other words, what's the goal of a eulogy? Is it to give kavod ultimately again to the family left behind, or is it to give kavod to the deceased? So the ma'inaf kamina. So meaning, what does it matter? What does it matter? To which the Gemara says, "The amar lo tispedu alahu gavra." Right? Let's say again, the deceased left in his will, no eulogies, no eulogies. So we'll say if it's a din in his own kavod, so he has the right to go ahead and yield and be mavater on his own kavod. But if it's for the kavod of the living, then the deceased does not have the right to go ahead and request that they forego that kavod. I mean, most of the other possibility is la fuki meyarshin. Let's say this is very interesting. Let's say again, they want to bring in someone to give a hesped. I guess like like a Hesped scholar in residence. He's an excellent speaker. They want to bring him in. But there are travel expenses associated with it. Do the Yarshim have an obligation to pick up the expenses for the eulogizer? So we'll say again, if you say that it's a din ultimately in the covenant of the deceased, then the Yarshim would have an obligation to go ahead and pay for those expenses. But if on the other hand it's a din in Yakir Dechai that ultimately the covenant given to the living, then halacha l'maisa, again, they could choose to forego that. So Tashma, so the Gemara says, Vayav Avraham as well as Rav Kosa. Pasuk says, Avram Avinu came, beginning of Parashas Chayei Sarah, to eulogize Sarah and to cry for her. So the Gemara says, V'i amrit mishum yikar dechai. If you want to say that eulogies are honors to the living, mishum yikra davra mashu lehu Sarah, because of the honor to Avram Avinu, would they leave Sarah unburied? Now, also what the Gemara is assuming over here is the following. Avram Avinu, like Rashi points out, was not in Hebron when Sarah Imenu died. He was not present. So therefore, again, the idea over here is they waited for Avram to get back in order to bury Sarah. The Pashas wanted to bury her and in order to go ahead and eulogize her. So if you tell me they left her unburied overnight because Avram Avinu's eulogy was a covenant for Sarah, then I understand why they would have left her unburied overnight. But if you want to tell me that the eulogy is a covenant for the living, it would be a covenant for Avram Avinu. So because of the covenant of Avram Avinu, we're going to leave Sarah Imenu unburied overnight. To which the Gemara says, Sarah Gufa nechala keichidim Yaakov Avram. For Sarah Imenu, it was a great covenant for her that more honor should come to her husband. The idea being that Avram Avinu should be able to get additional covenant through being able to eulogize was in and of itself a covenant for Sarah Imenu. Tashma, the Sabtulo Kol Yisrael v'Kavruosam. So we'll say the pasuk says, and all of Kol Yisrael will eulogize him, and they will bury him. So we'll say this is what we learned yesterday. This is by Avia, the son of Yeravam ben Nevat. The Navi ultimately saying that even though the family of Yeravam ben Nevat was going to be totally wiped out, because this son Avia was a tzaddik, therefore he would receive a proper burial. To which the Gemara says, and if you want to say that eulogizing the dead is an honor for the living, Hanach b'nei Yigronenu, should these relatives of Avia receive any kind of covet? To which the Gemara says, Neichalu l'tzadika demiyakre b'hu inshi. It is a beneficial to tzaddikim, ultimately again, that his mishpacha, even if they're not tzaddikim, should have some covet through him. Tashma, lo yispadu v'lo yikberu. So we'll say this about again the people of Anatot, right? The Navi Yirmiyahu says they worship Avodah Zarah, therefore they will not be eulogized, they will not be buried. So the Gemara says, lo nechalei l'tzaddikim demiyakri b'rishaya. So ultimately, again, why won't they be eulogized? Because tzaddikim do not want to be uplifted through the memory of the Rishayim. Tashma, b'shalom tamus, u'b'misrafos avasecha hamalachim harishonim ashahayu lefanecha kin yisrifu lach, v'habi adon yispedu lach. So we'll say, this is the Navi. If you look at Rashi, last Rashi on the page, v'habi adon yispedu lach v'tzidkiyo nemar. So we'll say, this is Yirmiyahu HaNavi speaking to the king Tzidkiyo. Tzidkiyo is about to be conquered. He's about to be conquered and about to be exiled. The Navi gives him nechama by telling him, you are going to die a normal death. Right? In other words, you're not going to be killed now in this invasion. You're going to die a normal death. You'll be eulogized. It also speaks out, interestingly enough, the burning of his possessions. It used to be even Jewish practice that they would burn the king's possessions after his death, like his personal effects. That was considered to be an act of kavod, that no one else should go ahead and use the king's possessions. An interesting discussion. We're going to see it in Avodah Zarah. It comes up, actually, we're going to see in Sanhedrin also. It comes up because it's an interesting discussion else about tashkis, unnecessary waste. So again, we'll see it. The point over here is that the Navi is telling Tzidkiyahu, you're going to be eulogized when you die. To which the Gemara says, if you want to say that eulogizing is covered given to the living, so then what does Tzidkiyahu care if he's going to be eulogized when he's going to be dead? This is what he means to say. Klal Yisrael will be uplifted for you, or I should say, through you, the same way that what? The same way that you were lifted, the same way that you were uplifted ultimately through your forefathers. We'll say top of Mem Zayin. Tashma, Nivza be'enav nim'as. Literally, again, he who is degraded in his own eyes. Zehu Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Zehu Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Zeu Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda, Shegirer Atzamos Aviv Al Mita Shel Chavalim. The Bible said this refers to Chizkiyahu who degraded himself. How did he degrade himself? He went ahead and he took his father's bones and he dragged them through the street. The Bible said, now his father was an incredible Oved Avodah Zarah. Chizkiyahu, in an effort to repudiate his father's idolatry, publicly dishonors his father's remains. But of course, through this repudiation of idolatry, he's also what? He's slighting his own covenant. He's slighting his own covenant. So the Gemara says, my time. So we'll say now, what Gemara says is the following. If you understand that eulogizing ultimately, again, is a form of honor to the living, then we would assume ultimately, again, that this dishonor is also a form of dishonor to the living. To which the Gemara says, my time is, so why would Chizkiyahu do it? Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Amida shel chavalim, derech bizoyim shehaya aviv rasha, ubize le'enei kol, kedei sheyisrasu achim u'lekavod atzmo lo chash, u'mepnei kavod av nami lekel mechash. Fine. So let's finish the Gemara. Umishum, the Gemara says that they havile kapara la'avua. Chizkiyahu did this, I will say, not only as a repudiation of idolatry, but as a form of kapara for his father. He felt that this humiliation to his father's remains would in and of itself be a kapara to his father. To which the Gemara says, Mishum kapara davua mashvu le'ikar di Yisrael. But I don't understand it. But it's not just a degradation to his father, it's a degradation to Klal Yisrael. Because his father was a melech also. By dishonoring the king, you are dishonoring the nation. To which the Gemara says, Yisrael gufayu meichalu demechli yikarei legade. For Klal Yisrael, this was a good thing also. Klal Yisrael was willing to forego ultimately, again, their covet, if first of all it could affect the kapara for their now deceased king, and ultimately, again, if it could serve Klal Yisrael's interest through a repudiation of idolatry. So we'll say, we're still focused on one basic question, which is, what's the nature of the eulogy? Is a eulogy given as a form of honor to the deceased, or is a eulogy given as a form of honor to the living? We're trying to figure out which one exactly this is. So Tashma, Amar Lahen, Al Tispeduni Ba'ayaros. Well, so this is actually amazing. So this Gemara Maseches Ksubis that we learned before, this was Rabbeinu HaKadosh, as Rashi points out. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi said before he died that when you eulogize me, only eulogize me in large cities. Look at Rashi. Al Tispeduni Ba'ayaros. Rabbeinu HaKadosh Siva es Bana B'Ksubis. Banose, Al Tispeduni Kishotolichu es Aroni Lamokom Kavorasi. Dumeis Bitzipori, Vikovrasa Bebeis Sharim. Al Tispeduni Ba'ayaros Kitanos. Shetavru Alein El Bikrachim Gidolim Diika An Shituba. So let's listen to this. Rebbe instructed his children that ultimately, again, when he died in Sipori, but he was going to be buried in Beis Sharim, which means his remains were going to be transferred. So they would eulogize him at different stops. Rebbe said, only eulogize me in large cities where there will be large assemblies of people. If you want to say ultimately again that a eulogy is an honor for the living, what does it matter if eulogy is given in a small city or a large city? Kasavar liyaskaru bei Yisrael tfei. Rebbe thought that through his eulogies, Klal Yisrael ultimately again will receive more honor. In other words, that through his eulogies, so his dedication to Klal Yisrael, his love of Klal Yisrael, the singularity of Klal Yisrael will come out, and therefore his eulogies will be a form ultimately again of kavod for Klal Yisrael. Because it'll be a platform for kavod for Klal Yisrael, he instructed that it only be done in larger cities. Tashma, Helinu Lichvodo, supposed to listen to this. Let's say they left a person unburied overnight. For what purpose? For his own kavod, for the kavod of the mace. For example, because they needed to bring a casket or shrouds, Aino over love. So we'll say there is no prohibition of baltalin, of leaving the body unburied. If the body is left unburied, out kavod amace. When we which the Gemara says, my love lichvodo shamis. When we say helinu lichvodo, that they left him buried, they left him unburied overnight, lichvodo, for his honor. Isn't the honor that we refer to the honor of the mace? Sisi Abba said that everything we do in the burial process, what the Gemara is driving at, is including eulogies, is done for the kavod amace. To which the Gemara says, no, my lav kodesh amace lo lichvodo shel chai. No, maybe it means that you could leave a person unburied even for the covet of the living. In other words, if there's some aspect that if there's some greater covet for the living relatives to delay the levaya, we allow you to do that. So we see that when it comes to details surrounding the death, whether it's the timing of the burial or for that matter the eulogies, it's a din in kavod achai. It's a din ultimately again in the covet given to the surviving relatives. You're going to tell me because of the honor due to the living, we're going to leave the dead unburied overnight? And yes, we will. Because after when the pasuk says lo salin ivlasa ala eitz, when the pasuk says do not leave the body hanging overnight, dumya de taloi de ispe bizayon, aval hacha de less baby zayon lo. So we'll say at the end of the day, what the Gemara is saying over here is the following: that the prohibition of halaras hames, of leaving a dead person unburied overnight, is when there will be a compromise to the dignity of the deceased, like you leave him hanging on a tree. But in a situation where there's not a compromising of the dignity of the deceased, so the prohibition of Baltan, the Gemara is suggesting, will not apply. Now again, I'll say the caveat to that is we don't unnecessarily leave a person unburied overnight. What the Gemara is just saying is if there is a compelling reason out the living to leave the dead unburied overnight and the dead is not in a compromised or degrading situation, we will allow you to do that. Tashma, Helinu lichvodo, l'shama alav alai ayaros. So we'll say if they left the dead person unburied overnight, lichvodo, for his honor. So for example, to get the news out about the death in the cities, lahavi lo mekonenos, to bring wailers. And we'll say, now what does that mean, wailers? They used to have like professional criers who came to a levaya. Lahavi lo aron vitachrichin, to go ahead and bring a casket. Excuse me. Thank you. To bring a casket, to bring shrouds. Eino over alov. Shakala osa eino ela lichvodo shalmes. Because they will say everything that's being done ultimately again is being done l'kavod hames. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see that the details surrounding the levaya are a din in kavod hames. To which the Gemara says, no. Hachi kamer. Kala osa lichvodo shal chai ein lo bizar lemes. Whenever you do something ultimately again for the honor of the living, just know that there is no bizayon hames in that. Tashma. Rabbi Nassan says, Simin yafal hames shenifrain mimeno la'achar misa. So this is actually amazing. The Gemara says it is a good simin for the person who died. Shenifrain mimeno, if retribution is extracted from him after his death. Also, what does this mean? It's a good simin for the dead person if some lack of kavod is given to him after his death. For example, the Gemara says, Meis shalom nispat. For example, if for some reason eulogies weren't delivered, velo nikbar, or he wasn't buried, they will say, now what the Rishonim point out over here is what this means is he wasn't buried immediately. O shechaya goraraso, or a wild animal dragged his body. O shaya gisham himself and amitaso, or it was raining on the day of the levaya. Zeu simin yafal hames. Ultimately, again, this is a good siman. I will say, what does that mean? What that means is, if the levaya is imperfect, right, and there's some circumstance that takes away a little bit from the kavod given to the mace, it's a kapara. It's a kapara. That's exactly, it's a kapara, and it's beneficial for the mace to have that kapara visited upon its guf, right? Its lifeless guf here in this world, than to have that kapara visited upon its neshama in shamayim. So as it says, what do you see from here? Shmamina, yikra d'shachvihu. We'll say, but one thing that comes out, what do you see from here? If for some reason a eulogy was not delivered, so you see ultimately again that is considered to be a kapara for the mace. Therefore, what do you see from here? That eulogies are a form of honor according to the mace. Shmamina, yikra d'shachvihu, shmamina. So we'll say, indeed, we see halacha l'maisa, that the way we look at eulogies are a form of respect, a form of kavod to the deceased. And that is how the Gemara ends off halacha l'maisa. Now again, of course, one can make the argument that eulogies do both things, right? They give kavod to the deceased and they also give kavod to the living. That's absolutely true. But again, we saw in the Gemara that there are certain nafkaminas. From a halachic perspective, the way we understand eulogy is a form of kavod hames, a form of honor given to the dead. The Gemara goes right to lahayu kavod. So also remember again, the Mishnah said that after they executed the individual and they and they hung the body. So remember again, the Gemara said they buried them in a special base, in a special cemetery. Right? They were not buried in ancestral plots. They had two different cemeteries. And if you remember again, the Mishnah said the two different cemeteries. One was for those killed with hereg and chenek, right, through a sword and through strangulation, and the other was one for those who were killed through skila and sreifa, through stoning and burning. So says the Gemara, "V'chol kach lama." I don't understand. Why do you have to have a special cemetery? Why can't you just bury the deceased in their family plot? To which the Gemara says, "Lefishen koven Russia itzel tzaddik," because we do not bury wicked people next to righteous people. Damar of Achar Brachanina, minayin shein koven Russia itzel tzaddik. How do we know that we don't bury Rishoyim next to tzaddikim? Shene'emar vayhi hem kovrim ish v'neiro es hagidud v'yashlichu es ha'ish b'kever Elisha. So I'll say the Navi tells an incredible story. The Navi tells a story about a group of individuals who are burying a guy, just some guy, right? We'll see he wasn't such a good guy. And what happens? As they're in the midst of burying the individual, they are attacked by a Gentile army, by some group of marauding troops. So what do? They threw the body into the nearest burial cave. It just happened to be that it was the burial cave of the Navi Elisha. What happened? Vayiga ha'ish ba'atzmos Elisha. So the body of this guy touched the bones of Elisha. Vayichi, he came back to life. Vayakam al raglav, he stood up on his feet. So the Gemara says, so what was the point of this? I will say the idea, and Rashi points this out. The idea was that this individual was an unrighteous man, and therefore, again, he could not be buried next to Elisha. So he comes back to life, he walks out of the burial cave, and he dies again. So says the Gemara, Amar le Papa, v'dilma lekiyume vehina pishnai baruchacha elai. But maybe this was a kiyum, ultimately, again, of Elisha's request. We'll say right before Elisha's Rebbe, Eliyahu, dies, Eliyahu says to Elisha, remember, Eliyahu Hanavi doesn't die. Eliyahu Hanavi ascends to Shamayim in a fiery chariot. And Eliyahu says to Elisha, here's the deal. If you go ahead and you see me ascend, that means that you have reached an elevated spiritual level. If you reach that level, I hereby grant you whatever brachas you want. So one of the interesting brachas that Elisha asked for was a pishnayim beruchacha elai. That give me double your ruach, give me double your spirit. So there are many interpretations of that, but one of them is Eliyahu Hanavi brought one person back to life. Elisha was asking for pishnayim, let me bring two people back to life. So of course, that Elisha brought one person back to life. He brought the young boy back to life, who again, right, the son of the Isha Tzarfati, who remember again, we know was who? Was Yonah, right? And now again, the Gemara said just maybe the fact that this man came back to life, this was the Pishnayim. Maybe this was again the second time he brought someone back to life, to which the Gemara says, Amalei, if that's the case, Ihachi Hainu Disanyo, Al Raglav Amad, Ula Beisalo Halach. So I'll say here's the issue. The issue is if that's the case, then the guy should have totally come back to life. But he doesn't come back totally. What happens? He comes back to life enough to what? Enough to walk out of the burial cave. But it's like the Navi said he went back home. Right? He didn't go back home. Meaning, what it appears is he came back to life, walked out of the burial cave, but then he died again. If this was really the Pishnayim, then what? Then Lamaitz, again, he should have come back to life altogether. If that's the case, so the Gemara says, Ella ve'ina Pishnayim heichim mishkachasla. So ultimately, again, when ultimately did he go ahead and so where did Elisha have his Pishnayim of bringing someone back to life? He healed the tzara'as of Naaman. Remember again, Naaman was the general of the army of Aram, who ironically enough comes to the Jewish prophet to help him get healed from his tzara'as. And what happens? Elisha heals him. The person who has tzara'as is choshev kameis, is like he's dead. So therefore, the fact that he healed someone with tzara'as is like a form of bringing someone back to life. So says the Gemara, T'chsev al nati kameis, or kishem shen koven rasha etzel tzadik. And I was like, going back to what we said before, the same way that you can't bury a rasha next to a tzaddik. So we'll say we are on Mem Zayin Amud Beis in the fourth wide line. Kach in koven rasha chamar etzel rasha kal. We'll say so too again. The same way we don't bury a rasha next to a tzaddik, we also don't bury a really bad rasha next to a not so bad rasha. Also, what does that mean? Meaning there are different gradations of Rishayim. So someone ultimately, again, who was an extreme Rasha is not buried next to someone who was a lesser Rasha. So the Gemara says, so we'll say the logic behind that, what the Gemara is pointing out over here is the following. This is why we have two different cemeteries. We have one cemetery for hereg and chenek, for death by sword and strangulation, one for skila and sreifa. Skila and sreifa are considered to be more severe forms of death that are given to more severe transgressions, versus hereg and chenek, which are also obviously, all death is severe, but they are considered to be lesser punishments. Therefore, we don't bury them next to each other. To which the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, the Liskan Arba Karos, Shnei, to which the Gemara says, why don't you set up 4 cemeteries? Why don't you set up 1 cemetery per Misas Bezdin? To which the Gemara says, Shnei Kifaros Gemara Gemirla. Our tradition is, the meaning of Masorah has been 2 cemeteries. Okay? Amar Ulam Rabbi Yochanan. Achal Chelev V'Hefresh Karban V'Hemer Daito. Supposed to listen to this. Let's say a person went ahead and accidentally ate forbidden fat, accidentally ate chelev, and then what happens? He separated out his karban, V'Hemer Daito, then he became an apikoris. So we'll say, so the case over here is, right, Reuven ate chelev accidentally, therefore he's liable to bring a karban. He separated the karban, he then became an apikoris, and now he's chozer b'tshuva, v'chazer ba. So we'll say, what's the shaila? The shaila is, can he offer up that karban? Can he offer up that karban? To which the Gemara says, no, hoil v'nitche yitche. So also Rabbi Yochanan says, since the karban has been set aside, it's set aside. Now the underpinning of this halacha, as Rashi points out, is we do not accept karbanos from apikarsim. We don't accept the karban from an apikoris. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan is suggesting on both sides the following. Once the guy becomes an apikoris, therefore what? His karban is not accepted. And once his karban is not accepted, can't be accepted, you can't reinstate the effectiveness of that karban. So even once he becomes a Baal Tshuva, that's fine, but once that karban was set aside for not-offering, it cannot be reinstated. Hoil v'nitche yitche. Itmar, I was a Bryce that supports this. Rabbi Yochanan, achal chelev v'hefresh karban. Listen to this case. A person ate chelev, forbidden fat, and they have to offer a karban. They set aside the karban. Then what happens? V'nishtata. The person became insane. Now, both say a shota can't offer a karban either. You have to have das. So in this case, again, a person came to us where he didn't have das. The chazar v'nishtaf, and then Baruch Hashem, he's healed. What's the halacha? Both say since the karban was in a state where it could not be offered, what Rabbi Yochanan essentially is teaching us is which means that once a karban could not be offered, even if the circumstances changed back to what they were before, the karban still can't be offered. Jewish Gemara says, why do I need both cases? If would have just told me the apikoris case, I would have said it can't be offered. Why? Because he's responsible for the change in his circumstance. So because he is responsible for the change of his circumstance, he did it himself. Therefore, again, he caused this situation, and therefore the karban cannot be reinstated even once he is chozer b'tshuva. But I would have said the guy who becomes a shota, the guy who goes insane, so he didn't do this to himself. Maybe he should be like a person who's sleeping. Just like a person has a period every single night where he doesn't have das, but yet ultimately, again, his karban is still effective the next morning. Maybe when someone becomes a shota, that's like a prolonged period of sleep. And therefore, when he quote-unquote wakes up, the karban should once again be good. Kamashwan, that's not the case. We'll say, if we're just talking by the shota case, I would have said hoil v'nitche yitche because he doesn't control his ability to return to a normative state. Aval hasam to biyadolachzor imalo. But I might have thought that in that case, in the case of the apikoris, because he has the ability to return to be chozer b'tshuva whenever he wants, imalo, I would have thought that therefore his karban does not forever become yitcha, does not become set aside, therefore against yicha. Therefore, I need both cases. In other words, so what the Gemara is suggesting over here is that the principle of Rabbi Yochanan will apply in both of these cases. Rabbi saying this indeed is halacha l'maisa, that whenever a person has a change in status, and as a result of that change in status, in the current status, right, original status, he could offer the karban. Then status changes. In this changed status, he cannot offer the karban, either because he changed his status or the status was changed. even if the status reverts back to what it once was, to mirror what it was when he separated the carbon can no longer be offered. Once a carbon transitions to a state where it is unable to be offered, it cannot retransition back to its previous state. That's hoil v'nitcha yitcha. Amar Yosef, afanana mitanina, hayuba kachim is be'ach yamonsu. Supposed to say this time at Ir Nidachas. In a Ir Nidachas, you have to destroy everything within the city, right? And therefore again, what do you do if there are kachim? Kachim is be'ach yamonsu, you let them die. Kachim v'dekabais, if there are things that were sanctified for ultimately again the benefit of the Beis Hamikdash, then what? Yiptu. Ultimately again they are redeemed. You redeem them for their value. V'avinan ba amaya musu. Why don't you go ahead and why do you have to let the kachim mizbeach? Why do you have to let them die? Kevan diikto havilu kapara. So we assume that death atones. Once they kill these individuals, they should be tzaddikim. If that's the case, we could offer up the karbanos. It must be because that since they worship Avodah Zarah, they effectively became apikarsim. Once they became apikarsim, the carbon was set aside for non-use. And once it's set aside for non-use, you cannot go ahead. It does not revert back to its previous state. The Gemara just opened the door to an interesting discussion, which is the ability for death to atone. The ability for death to atone. To which the Gemara Abaye says, who says that when you die in a state of rishos, in a state of evil, that your death atones for you? So the Gemara says, so I could argue that when you die in a state of being a rasha, it doesn't give you a kapara. The Tanya of Shemaya, I might have thought that if the Kohen has parents who left the derech, if the Kohen has parents who have become apikarsim, maybe he should become tameh for them. Tamulomar ba'amav. Therefore, again, the pasuk says, who does the Kohen become tameh for? Only for relatives that are be'amav in his nation. Ba'osei ma'isa amav. Only when his relatives are conduct themselves as Jews. But if they totally leave the fold, then haloch l'ma'isa, again, the Kohen does not become tameh for them. Amar le Rava. So we'll say, so why doesn't that make sense? Because if you see that Misa is mechaper, so then what? When, let's say, the Kohen's father dies, even if his father was a mamish napikores, then what? Once he dies, what should happen? Death is a kapara. If death is a kapara, the father effectively becomes a tzaddik. If he's a tzaddik, then the son, the Kohen, should be able to matami himself for him. To which the Gemara says, "Only Rava mi kamet damas neherad mitoch risho lemeis mitoch risho." You're comparing apples and oranges. You can't compare someone who is executed by Beis Din versus someone who dies on their own. Meis mitoch risho kevan the arche kaimis lo havile kapara. We'll say if a person dies of natural causes and he dies while being a rush, or he never did tshuva, then his death does not atone for him. Nerag mitoch risho kevan delav arche mayis havile kapara. We'll say when a person is executed because of his rishos, because this is a non-normative death, therefore that act of execution ultimately atones for him. After all, what do we say? Mizmor li asaf elokim bo gani benachal asecha timu esecha lecha nosnu es nivlas avadecha lema'acha le'of hashamayim b'sar chasidecha lechai sa'aretz. So the pasuk in Navi discusses the idea that you have given over the nivlas, the corpses of your servants, for food to the birds of the heaven, and the flesh of your chasidim to the animals of the earth. My avodecha, my chasidecha. What's the difference between these two individuals, an Evan and a chasid? Lav chasidecha, chasidecha mamish. So we'll say chasidecha refers to people who are truly pious. Avodecha, hanach temechayve dina, demeikara, b'chayvan deikto karlu avodecha. We'll say who are avodecha? These are individuals who really were Rishayim. They were Rishayim, and they deserve to die. But because they were killed ultimately again by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kari le avodecha, ultimately, again, their death atones, and therefore what? They are called avadecha. Amar le Abaye says, 1 second. Ni kamendamis. How can you compare? I'm a base. Haruge malchus la haruge beis. So we'll say the pasuk over here in Navi, Mizmor li asaf elokim bo goyim benachal asecha, is talking about Jews killed by Gentiles, what we call haruge malchus. How can you compare those killed by a Gentile government to those killed by Beis Din? The Gemara says, Harugi Malchus, Kevon Dishalo Bedin Kamiktali Havili Kapara. See both sides. Those who are killed by a Gentile government, the Gemara literally says, because they're not killed Bedin, they're not killed justly, so ultimately their death is a kapara. But another way of explaining this is anyone who's killed by a non-Jew for the mere fact that what? That they're a Jew, that is a death al Kiddush Hashem. And that death al Kiddush Hashem is irrespective of their own personal spiritual status. In other words, a person can be a Rosh Gomer, but if they're killed because they're a Jew, that's a death al Kiddush Hashem. Death al Kiddush Hashem is automatically mechaber. It's automatically mechaber. Even if the person did not do tshuva at all, even if a person mamish was a rasha merusha and apikores gomer, dying because you're a Jew is a death al Kiddush Hashem is mechaber. On the other hand, haruge bezdin kevan debedin kamiktali lo havilu kapara. But if a person is executed by bezdin for their crimes, that is a just execution. A just execution does not automatically provide kapara. Unless, of course, what? The person does tshuva before. And I will say, remember again, that's our Mishnah. That's why we saw before that what are they doing is they take the person towards the Beis HaSkila. What do they tell him? Do tshuva. To which the Gemara says, to which Teda, this time the Hayu cover no so Mikiras Avosa. Because what's after all, the proof to this is that after they executed a person, they did not bury him in a family plot. But if you want to say that death is an automatic atonement, then what I will say, after the Beis Din executes the individual, where should they bury him? They should bury him in his family plot. Rather, what do you see? Misa ukavura ba'ina. Rather, I will say what you see is that in order to effect full atonement, you need death and burial. We already began to see this yesterday, that burial itself begins to affect, also has a kapara-like quality. Either it's because that sometimes a person's greatest sin is gaiva, a person lifts themselves up, and burial is the act of being taken down, lowered down. So bless you. So that in and of itself is a kapara. There's also something called sar chibut hakever. And we'll discuss this today a little bit going into tomorrow's daf, which is there is pain associated with being in the kever. Now again, it's not a physical pain because when a person's dead, they don't experience physical pain. It's some type of pain that the neshama experiences by seeing the decomposition of the body or the degradation of the body. That pain is in and of itself a kapara. So what the Gemara is suggesting over here is that lemaisa, again, the kapara for the person who is executed is a two-pronged kapara. The first part of it is death, but the other part of it is kvura. So because death does not affect full kapara, therefore what? The person who is executed cannot be buried in a family plot, has to be first buried in the cemetery of Beis Din. Most civil of advar ava lo hayamis avlin ela oninin shenaninos ela baleid. So what's the word of the Mishnah say? The Mishnah that when someone is buried, someone executed by Beis Din, the family does not observe avelos in the formal sense. There's aninos, they mourn in their heart, there's sadness, but there's no formal avelos. But 1 second, if you want to say that as soon as the person is buried, burial affects kapara, then what? They should be able to observe shiva. Because it will say again, remember, again, let them bury the individual, let the family observe shiva. No. When we say that burial affects atonement, Rabbi said, it's not just the act of placing the body in the ground, it's the beginning of the decomposition of the body as well. We need the beginning of decomposition to occur. That's the atonement. Dekanami diktani nisachel habasar melaktin esatamos v'kovin oso bizmabim koman. Because most remember, what did the Mishnah say? We bury the person in the cemetery of Beis Din. Then once the body decomposes, the family collects the bones and reburies the bones in a family plot. So you see from here on both sides, death is the first part of the burial. You see the first part of the atonement. And then burial with the decomposition of the body is the second part of the atonement. Rav Ashi Amar, avelos, there's another reason why they can't observe avelos. Avelos me'emasai kamaschalos. We'll say, when does Shiva begin? When does avelos begin? Mistimas hagolo. As soon as, as we remember from our Moed Cotton days, as soon as the grave is filled in. Once the grave is filled in, technically speaking, Shiva begins then. Kapara me'emasai kahavyo. But ultimately, again, when does kapara begin? Only michichazut sar de kivra porta. Only when the neshama begins to have what we call sar de kivra, what we call sar chibot hakever. And ultimately, again, sar chibot hakever, this pain of burial only begins when Rabbi saying when the body begins to decompose. So therefore, again, you see, kapara really only kicks in later. Therefore, we can't observe Shiva now. Hilchaf, hol v'itchu yitchu. So we'll say, why not go ahead and begin to observe Shiva, right, at some later time? Let's say, when I don't know at what point in time decomposition begins. Let's say it's a week. So observe Shiva a week later. So you see, no, once you can't observe Shiva at its appropriate time, then what? Once it's set aside, it's set aside. So if that's the case, says the Gemara, what the Gemara is suggesting I will say over here is the following, is that halacha l'maisa, what you're telling me now is, we don't really need the full body to decompose in order for kabbalah to be effective. Rather, you only need decomposition to begin. If that's the case, why does the Mishnah say you have to wait for the body? So the way the Mishnah reads it will say is, we bury the person in the cemetery of Basin, we wait for the body to fully decompose, we collect the bones, and then rebury them. But what you're saying over here now is, all you need is for decomposition to begin in order for kapara to be complete. If that's the case, wait for decomposition to begin, and then what? Unbury the body, right? Exhume the body, and rebury it in the family burial plot. Then why do you have to wait for full decomposition? To which the Gemara says, Mishundul Afshar. Because it will say you can't. In other words, the Gemara says, you can't take a body that is in the process of decomposition and rebury it. It's going to be a very, very, very difficult and unpleasant situation. And there are a couple of problems. Number one, because it's just an unpleasant situation. Number two, I'll say because when the body is in the process of decomposition, it's also hard to know that you're getting all of the different parts of the body in the process of reburial. Therefore, again, even though on a technical level, because kapara has been affected once decomposition begins, you could technically exhume the body and rebury it in the family plot. But because logistically it's impossible and really a bizayon to the mace, we wait until full decomposition is complete, collect the bones, rebury them. To which the Gemara also listen to this. The Gemara is not going to transition into a discussion about general Isser Hana by graves. So Kavri Derav, Havushakli Mini Afra Lashisa Basyalos. So listen to this. So apparently one of the Talmudic remedies was for a day-old fever, you take earth and you mix with some kind of concoction. People used to take earth from the grave of Rav. From the grave of Rav. I'll say, whether that was because they thought that the earth of his grave had better qualities, or just because it was right there, or because the earth itself was soft, whatever the Metzias was, they would take grave from, I want to be clear, they weren't taking up his grave. What it means is they were taking soil from the top of his grave to go and make in this concoction to take care of a fever. To which the Gemara says, so what happens? Amrulei l'Shmuel. So people came to Shmuel and they complained about this process, about this thing. They said, how could it be that they're disrespecting Rav's grave like this? Shmuel said, the truth is, there's no problem. There's no problem. Why? Karka olamu. Because I will say, this is karka, it's earth. The karka olam inon eseres. And I will say, earth can never become aser bana. In other words, people were complaining because they thought that as a grave, it should be aser bana. It should be prohibited from use. To which Shmuel said, no, it's karka, it's earth, and earth itself can never become aser bana. How do we know this? Because the pasuk says in Malachim Beis that the Navi took the Asherah tree, he ground it up, and he sprinkled it on the graves of the Avodah Zarah. Makish kever b'nei ha'am la'avodas kochalim. The Navi compares a kever of the people to Avodah Zarah. What's the comparison? Ma'avodas kochalim mechuber lo misira. It's actually very interesting. Something that is mechuber lekarka cannot become aser as Avodah Zarah. How do we know this? Tichsiv asher atem yorshim osam es Elohim ala harim haramim. That the Navi talks about. Talks about the Klal Yisrael, the land that you're going to inherit, and the gods, referring to Avodah Zarah, al haharim, on the high mountains. Al haharim Elohim, velo haharim Elohim. Destroy the gods that sit on the mountains, but you do not have to destroy the mountains that they make gods. Now, Shabbos say, if somebody comes along and goes ahead and says, that mountain is a god, that mountain is a god, and they make the mountain Avodah Zarah, it doesn't work. Otherwise, you'd be in big trouble, right? If somebody, can you imagine someone, Ovid Avodah Zarah could come and say, that mountain is my God. And they make that Avodah Zarah. Can you imagine the tzars that causes everyone else? So the halacha is, you can't make something that is mechuber lekarka into an Avodah Zarah. I'll say the exception to this is an Asherah tree, right? That's the exception to this rule. But otherwise, what it really means is you can't make a part of the topography, right? You can't make a part of the you can't make karka into avodah zarah. So to both sides, the Navi compares avodah zarah to graves. The same way, ultimately, again, that you can't make something that's mechuber the karka avodah zarah. So the something that's mechuber the karka ultimately, again, does not become asr out the grave. Mesa, is that true? So we'll say, therefore, the Gemara is suggesting over here that if I want to come and take earth from a grave for my own personal mundane purposes, then I am ultimately permitted to do so. Mesa, the Gemara is the kasha. If ultimately, again, a person goes in and digs a grave for his father, and then Rabbi says, so Reuven digs a grave for his father, but then he decides to bury his father elsewhere. So there's this open kever that was supposed to be for his father, but he buried his father elsewhere. You cannot, so he, the son, can't use that grave. So we'll say, so what do you see from here? You see that a grave is asr ba'ano. That once a grave was set aside for someone, you can't use it for something else. So Gemara says, no. How come I asking? What's the case here? Rabbi say, bekever binyan. Rabbi said the case over here is where he built a structure for his father. So he built a structure in which to bury his father. Oh, so a binyan, a structure, can become asr ba'ano. So if the son created this binyan for his father, the son can't use it for himself. Tashma kever chadash mutar ba'ano. So we'll say, if you go ahead and you dug a grave, but you did not assign that grave to someone, it is mutar ba'ano. We'll say mutar ba'ano means you can use it for whatever you want. You want to entertain there. You want to sleep there. You want to, have overnights there. You could do whatever you want. That is yours to use. Hitel ba nefel. But the moment you bury someone in there, the Gemara uses the example of a nefel. A nefel is a miscarriage, which means even not a quote unquote full person, right? Even but once you use it as a burial plot, asr ba'ano. Ultimately, again, so what do you see from here? You see that graves are asr ba'ano. To which the Gemara says, "Hakanami bikever binyan." So to what are we talking about? We're talking about a structure. So we'll say we'll stop over here for today. We might record a little bit later on. I'll show you an idea from the parasha. But again, just understand what we emerged with today. Number one, we emerged that a eulogy is considered to be yikra d'shchivi. A eulogy itself is considered to be a form of kavod hameis. Now we're in the midst of a dramatic, riveting conversation. Oh, number two, we also learned that when you are killed ultimately again by Gentile government, the Gentile army, that's automatic din of that's death al kiddush Hashem, automatic kapara. What we're in the midst of trying to figure out is other now when somebody's executed by Beis Din, so death is part of their kapara. Beginning of decomposition is the second part of their kapara. Even though we could technically move the body after the beginning of decomposition, we don't because of logistical considerations. Now we're in the midst of trying to figure out, ultimately again, is a kever asr ba'ana or not? So Amirat Hashem will resolve that in Shabbos. But let me just share with you a short idea on the parasha. So the pasuk begins, the parasha begins with the laws concerning Yefas Toar. Well, the laws of war, we'll call it. So the pasuk says, Ki seitze le'melchama alayvecha, if you will go out to war against your enemy, unisano Hashem elokecha biyadech, and Hashem will deliver the enemy into your hands, vishavisa shivyo, and ultimately again you will take captives. And then of course the Torah goes on to discuss the laws of Yefas Toar, the war bride, Ben Sora Rumora, a number of different incredible and riveting halachas. We also know that the Sfarim bring down that when you go out to war is not just a din in the wars we wage externally, but try the Sfarim understand that embedded in this pasuk is also a message concerning the ultimate war that we wage each and every day, which is the war against the Yetzer Hara. That the Oyev, right? The Zohar brings down al oyvecha. When you go out to war against your enemies, who is the ultimate Oyev? It's an incredible yisod. The ultimate Oyev is never an external enemy. The ultimate Oyev is the Yetzer Hara. The ultimate Oyev, the ultimate enemy, are the enemies that we combat internally each and every day. Are the pushes and pulls, the desires, the proclivities that try to pull us in all types of negative directions in an effort to derail our positive life momentum. And therefore, embedded in this pasuk is the Torah giving us a strategy how to be successful over our Oyev, how to be successful over the Yetzer Hara, how to be successful over our internal self-sabotaging mechanisms. So I want to share with you a magnificent idea by the Maggid of Mezrich. So listen to this. He says, Noda, I'm going to read to you 2 lines. Noda, know that, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? The Milchama of the Yitzhak, the war against the Yetzer Hara. V'hinei, get ready for this, it's amazing. When 2 kings go to war against the other, Iker chachmas hamilchama levilti nason ha'oyev likanis bigvulo. Everyone knows that the best way to win a war is how? To go on the offensive. Never wage defensive wars, always wage offensive wars. The goal is never let the enemy enter into your boundaries. Ki be'im nichnas bigvulo as kavet hadavar lenetzch. Because if the enemy penetrates your boundaries, it's very difficult to be successful. Therefore, conventional wisdom says that if you're going to wage war, don't wait for the enemy to come to your borders. Rather, what? Bring the battle to your enemies. You go to him. Bring the battle ultimately again to his boundaries. Put him on the defensive. And it is so much easier to wage the battle, to win the battle, when you're on someone else's borders than when you're defending your own. Says the Rebbe something amazing. I will say what is true in the art of war, external war, is true in the art of war in internal war. Sheteitze lilchom keneged hayetzer hara. I will say, says Rebbe something absolutely amazing. Kiseitze l'milchama aleivecha. The goal is never to fight defensive wars against the Yetzer Hara. The goal is to fight offensive wars, right? The goal is kiseitze l'milchama aleivecha. Bring the battle to the Yetzer Hara. Kodem sheba lepesusecha lahatim lecha taimad yisur chas shalom ki achar kach yiyeh kasha lecha lifrosh mimenu al kain b'ni yididi. So therefore, the Maggid Mezrich says, "My son, I ask you, teitzei likraso teikef levilti nason ese Yetzer Hara lavo b'gvulecha le'echa me'avarecha." They both say the goal or the recipe for spiritual success is if I'm fighting defensively against the Yetzer Hara, if I allow him ultimately again to come into my borders, I'm fighting a defensive war, chances are I'm going to lose some territory. But if I go ahead and I live a life of kiseitze l'milchama aleivecha, don't wait for the Yetzer Hara. Both say what the Maggid is saying over here is something absolutely amazing. To lead spiritually proactive lives, not to figure out when the problem comes, how do I manage it? But to say to myself, I want to avoid coming in contact with the Yetzer Hara. How do I create for myself a life where I'm bringing the battle to him? How do I create for myself a lifestyle? How do I create for myself gidarim, protective boundaries? How do I avoid certain things that I know will put me in compromising positions? Because Rabbi say, if I allow the Yetzer Hara to come to my borders, I'm waging a defensive war. And when you're waging a defensive war, chances are there are going to be casualties. You're going to lose something. But kisitzi l'milchama aleivecha, bring the fight to the Yetzer Hara. Say it's an incredible yesod. So often in our ruchnius, we're playing catch up. A problem presents itself. I fail, and I'm trying to rebound. Failure is inevitable. We all have to rebound. But I say, imagine for a second if we become proactive in our ruchnius and asking ourselves proactively, where am I weak? Where are my weaknesses? What are the things I'm struggling with? And how do I take a proactive approach in remedying those weaknesses? Not waiting until those weaknesses manifest themselves in some hate, in some sin, in some negative behavior, but thinking to myself, how can I proactively, how can I go on the offense of my ruchnius instead of always being on the defense? What do I need to look at in my life? What do I need to look at in my lifestyle? What are the forms of entertainment that I engage in? Who are the people that I socialize with? What are the things in my life that I'm doing? And how are they contributing to the atmosphere of the life that I am engaging in? If a person is proactive in their ruchnius, then I bring the fight to the Yetzer Hara. And what happens? Kiseitze l'milchama aleivecha. Listen to what the Rebbe says. What's the next phrase? Unisano Hashem Elokecha biadecha. If I bring the fight to the Yetzer Hara, if I engage not in reactive spirituality, but in proactive spirituality, actively making a plan to become spiritually successful, like the Rebbe Shalom says, you'll be successful. You'll be successful. Not only be successful, vishavisa shivyo. You'll make the Yetzer Hara your captive. Not only will you be successful in the battle, but you'll even take prisoners. And I will say an incredible yesod for life, but an incredible yesod for Chodesh Elul as well. Spiritual proactivity. So often we're playing catch up in life. Something happens, something goes wrong. How do I fix it? Imagine for a moment where I take a strategic, proactive approach to my ruchnius. Before I'm struggling, to ask myself, in what areas am I weak? And in what areas do I need chizuk? In what areas can I improve? What's the plan for improvement? And I bring the fight to the Yetzer Hara. I don't wait till the fight comes to my borders, but instead I proactively engage. May we zochem Eretz Hashem to lead lives of kiseiti le'milchama ledecha. May we zochem Eretz Hashem to think about our neshamas enough that we engage in proactive religious and spiritual planning, and that's a chus. May we zochem Eretz Hashem to see the actualization of unisano Hashem Elokecha biyadecha v'shavisa shivyo.